All right, thank you very much for joining us this evening from whatever part of the world you are joining from. Please confirm that you can hear me in case you cannot hear me so that I am very sure that I am being heard. Sorry, just a second. Let me try and confirm that I am being clearly heard just to make sure that everybody can hear me properly. So I can also use that to just wait for maybe just 1 or 2 minutes if we still have people trying to join in the lesson. It's basically okay. Thank you for confirming that it's all good. I can be heard and I can be seen clearly. All right. So thank you very much. My name is Olúwa Dámiláre. If you find that very hard to call, you can just shorten in and call me Dami. I am a cinematographer and I am also a video editor, a film editor. So I've been doing this for I think about 7-8 years now. All right. So basically what we want to just learn this evening, it's just an introduction to video editing. If you are here and you're already a video editor, maybe you could also pick 1 or 2 things. But if this is just you trying to learn editing from the scratch, then you're very much welcome. So this evening, I'm going to be taking us through the basics of editing. And then basically for us to learn anything, we know that to edit, you definitely need some softwares to edit. And we have many editing softwares. Basically, we have a whole lot of softwares to edit. But then because we also have access to some softwares that are free, I am going to be touching and teaching from one of the free softwares. And then this software, it is also a software used very well in Hollywood for most of Hollywood's color grading, and that's DaVinci Resolve. We have some other softwares like Premiere Pro, that's quite very popular. But then in, I think, about 3-4 years now, Premiere Pro has been having a very serious issue. A whole lot of people have been moving away from Premiere Pro and moving to DaVinci Resolve. And that's because Premiere Pro has been so very unreliable and unstable. The developers, which is Adobe, they've been trying hard to improve on that software, but it's been a lot of back and forth, too many errors. And so a whole lot of people have all moved over to DaVinci Resolve. And DaVinci Resolve also is, like I mentioned earlier, a whole lot of studios in Hollywood use DaVinci Resolve for their color grading. And then up until recent, many people are now moving to it for editing. I've been using DaVinci Resolve to edit for about a year plus now since I left Premiere Pro. So, and it has been very stable. It has been very easy. You can do your color grading, you can do your sound editing, and you can do your video editing all in that one suite. You don't need, if you were using Premiere Pro, for example, which is Adobe software, if you want to edit properly, if you want to edit your audio properly, you sometimes have to move away from Premiere Pro and go to Adobe Audition to edit your audio. For those of us that are basically into podcasts, I know a lot of us use Adobe Audition, and that's totally fine. So you could always edit your audio in Adobe Audition and then bring it into DaVinci Resolve. That's totally fine. But for this class, I'm not going to be teaching on Premiere Pro. I'm going to be teaching DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve can also be found for free on Blackmagic's website. So they have a free version and then they have a studio version. I think the studio version is about $300, and then the free version can as well do everything the paid version can do. Just a little, there are just some little functionalities that you won't find in the free version. But there's basically nothing you want to edit on the free version of DaVinci Resolve that you won't. So let me share my setup with you first, so that you can see my setup, and then I share my screen with you. So basically, this is my setup. I'm working on 2 screens. For people who are not elaborate with editing, you really don't need all of this elaborate, settings. But because I do this professionally, my setting has to be this elaborate. All right. If it is just a laptop you have for your editing, it doesn't have to be this elaborate. But having more than a screen for editing makes your work, really easy. I can be watching my media here and then I can be editing on the other screen. All right. So I'm just showing you this so that you can see how very elaborate the setup can be sometimes, but that shouldn't make it, look so very frightening. All right. I also have some hardwares that I use for my editing. If you look at this, this is called DaVinci Resolve Speed Editor. I think it is sold for about $400 currently. This makes my editing very easy and fast. When I'm editing on DaVinci Resolve, you don't have to have this. You can just use your basic keyboard. All right. There is also the DaVinci Resolve editing keyboard that makes all of this. You can just have the two of them together at once. So that's just my setup for my editing. So let me share my screen so that we can all get to see what is going on my screen. All right. Just a second, please. All right. So what we will deal with first is your system specification. It is not all systems that you can use to edit. By now, we all know that. If you don't know that now, you know that it is not all systems, it's not all PCs that you can use to edit. There are some specifications that your system has to meet before you can say you want to use it to edit. If you are coming from an audio background, if you have been editing podcasts, if you have been editing audio, the system specification is not as high as when you move over to video, because video, you have a whole lot of processing power to deal with, so you need a very good system. There are some system specifications basically for DaVinci Resolve that I'm going to just briefly share with you. So currently I'm using a Mac. You could be editing on a Mac and you could also be editing on a Windows PC. Any of the two is very okay for you. So I'm using a Mac Mini. This is my Mac Mini, 16 gigabytes RAM. It is the M1 Mac Mini. So I basically can edit 4K videos on it without problems at all. All right. Let me just give you the system specifications quickly so that you learn what you need to have on your system before you can start to decide that you want to use your system to edit. On your Mac, if you're using a Mac system, you would need at least a Mac OS 11 Big Sur. You will need a minimum of 8 gigabytes of system memory. That's your RAM. Anything less than 8 gig, you're going to have a whole lot of problem. If you're using some advanced feature in DaVinci Resolve, there is this tab called the Fusion tab. Under Adobe, this is something that is similar to Adobe After Effects. All right, they do almost the same thing. You will need at least 16 gigabytes of RAM if you would be doing stuff that are very advanced. But for basic editing, you just want to put up videos together on your Mac, you will need at least 8 gigabytes of RAM. Ideally, you want to have 16 gigabytes. Most ideally, you want to have 32 gigabytes. If you have the budget, you want to have 64 gigabytes. All right. Okay. So that's for Mac. On Windows, you want to have at least Windows 10. Of course, I don't expect anybody to still be on Windows 7 at this point in time. All right. So you want to have at least Windows 10. You want to have at least 16 gigabytes of RAM on Windows. On Mac, you need at least 8 gigabytes. But if you're on Windows, you will need at least 16 gigabytes of RAM. You can have systems that are not up to 16 gigabytes of RAM on Windows and they can edit. But I can assure you that it will be a whole lot of work for the system. So eventually you are going to get frustrated because the system is going to slow down and you as well, your work will slow down. So ideally you want to have the 16 gigabytes of memory. If you're using Fusion, you need 32 gigabytes of memory. I would advise anybody, if you're getting a new system now, please get at least 32 gigabytes of RAM if you are going to be editing. Except budget is a very serious issue for you. That's when you do 16. But if you are getting any new system now, as a 2022, you want to get something with 32 gigabytes of RAM. That is not to say 16 gigabytes will not edit properly, all right? And then for Windows, you would actually need a discrete graphics card, something like NVIDIA, AMD, or Intel. I'm not so sure about Intel GPUs, but I know that NVIDIA, you have a whole lot of graphics card from NVIDIA that would work properly, and that is for Windows, all right? And that is on Windows and the Mac. For Linux, I really do not know so much about that operating system, so I will just stop on Mac and Windows. All right, so let me open DaVinci Resolve and then we can just get right into it. Don't forget, I had mentioned that you could also do this on Premiere Pro, but the reason why a whole lot of editors are moving to DaVinci Resolve is because Premiere Pro has been giving us a whole lot of issues, crashing here and there, as well as because the cost can pile up. If you're buying DaVinci Resolve at once, you buy it for $300 and it is a lifetime purchase. You don't have to pay anything again. That is aside the fact that there is a free version. All right, so you can go to Blackmagic's website and then you can download the free version. So let me start up my DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to put my system screen on full screen, and then I can bring myself to the corner of the screen. All right, so this is DaVinci Resolve 18. That's the current version for DaVinci Resolve 18. So when we are starting up when you've just started up the program, this is what would come up. And this is where you can line up all of your libraries, all of your projects. We call them your project library. All right, this is a library for your projects. So I could have a whole lot of projects that I'm currently working on. I could be working on 4 or 5 projects at a time, but then I want to switch, so that's why you need a library for it. And currently, I have a Windows database, I have a local database. So I moved from Windows to Mac, all right? And DaVinci Resolve makes it very easy for you to move from one operating system to another. So all I had to do was to just copy my Windows database and bring it over to my Mac, and then I started working on it. Let's just leave that for now. So let's go to starting up a new project. So you want to start editing a new project. Where do we start from? And that's where we come to our project library. Automatically, DaVinci Resolve would already have an untitled project ready for you. Okay, so normally you don't have to label your project before you start. All right, but ideally it is advised that you label your project before you even start at all. So we want to come over here to new projects, and then we can then type in the title of our new project. So let's say that tutorial class. That's the title of our project. All right, and then I say create. All right, so when you say create, this is what comes up for you on DaVinci Resolve. Now, like I had said earlier, you can do so many things on DaVinci Resolve. You can do a quick cut. If you come down here where my mouse is, this page is, we call this page the cut page. You can do a very quick cut on this page. We have another tab here that is called the edit page. When you click on this comes up. This is the edit page. So this page is, the edit page is where you do your elaborate editing. This cut page, if you want to do some very quick, you need a very quick turnaround of edit, that's when you come to your cut page. But if you want to do a very intensive editing, you come to your edit page. This page, we call it the Fusion page. This is for motion graphics, something like After Effects, where you have a whole lot of advanced, motion graphics. We do that on Fusion. After Fusion, we have the popular color page. Now, for every Hollywood movie you've seen, 90% of them are color graded in DaVinci Resolve on this page. That's where all of the color grading. We'll talk about all of that eventually. Even if we won't be able to talk of, even if we won't be able to touch on the color grading, but then I'll just talk about that a little. We have your Fairlight page. This page is called the Fairlight. This is where we work on our audio. So if you're somebody who is coming from a podcast background, like I had said earlier, if you want to edit your audio, you really don't have to move away from this software to go to Adobe Audition or any other software. You can do all of your audio edits on DaVinci Resolve as well. And then we have the deliver page. This is when you are done with your editing, you want to deliver. So we're trying to learn editing. So let's just go to our edit page. All right. So on our edit page, when we open up DaVinci Resolve, we have a whole lot of tabs that you would come across. A whole lot of tabs. We call this, usually I could close this up or I could enlarge it. So this is our bin. You have your bins where you can organize all of your footages, because you need to be organized. By the time you start editing and then you are bringing in a whole lot of files, if you do not organize your files, it can sometimes get very confusing, and then you're looking for a clip up and down. You're trying to find out where is this clip and all of that. So this is where, when we want to bring in all our media, this is where we will organize them. All right. So basically, before you start editing, I want to believe that you have your media on a drive. That could be an external hard drive, and that could be on an SSD. I'm trying to get my external hard drive. Okay, I have my SSD in my pocket. So this is a Samsung SSD. These are quite faster than when you use Let me bring it up very well so that you can see. So this is quite faster to edit on than to use physical hard drives. And then these ones they are less susceptible to failure. This can drop and I can pick it up easily. I have an hard drive on my system because they are much cheaper than SSDs, but they are slower than this. But then they are also prone to mechanical failure quickly. So most times I would advise that when you want to edit, you edit on an SSD. Just put up all your files on your SSD and connect it to your system, and you're good to go. All right. So let me bring up my hard drive on screen so that we can see what we want to work on. All right. So I have my 4 terabyte hard disk drive here. So let me just bring that up and then we can work on it. Okay. So I have organized what we're going to be working on. So sorry, let me just check. So I had prepared for all of this before I realized I was actually supposed to bring up, video podcast to edit. But then I am a videographer who works basically and majorly on weddings. So I'm going to be using a wedding edit as an example. This principle would apply to any edit you want to do. So whether you want to edit a film, you want to edit your podcast videos, you want to edit anything at all, it is all the same principle. All right. So I'm just trying to bring up my file. Let me see which one can we work on. All right. So let me just bring up this for you. I have this file here. All right. So this is my file and it is all organized. All right. So I could decide that I want to import in any of this. Okay, so the way to do that is that you come up to File. We have so many tasks that you can do on DaVinci Resolve. So let's bring in our files. We go to File. It is the same way with, if you have been using Premiere Pro, it is almost the same thing. All right, so we'll go to File and then we go to Import. Sorry, go to File and then you go to Import. Oh. You import media. So basically that's what we want to do. We want to import media into the system. So when I tell you to import media, it takes me to my hard drive. So it is going to ask me which of my hard drives do I want to bring in. However, recall that I had said that it is usually good that you organize your files before you bring them in. So I wouldn't bring my files in yet. I am going to start by creating a new bin. And how do you do that? Come to your bin, right click it and then say new bin. So I can easily rename the bin by saying, so let me take, for example, I want to say that this is rough shots. All right. And then I press enter. I want to create another bin and then I want to call this interviews. That's another shot. All right. So let's stay on the 2, rough shots and interview. So I click on my rough shots. Now I want to import in media into my rough shots. All right. So all I just need to do, I can also write, once I'm on rough shots, I can right click and say import media, or I can also come to file, import and import media. All right. I think you could also use some shortcut, but I wouldn't use shortcut so that those that are just joining and seeing this for the first time wouldn't feel confused. So I right click this and then I say import media. Okay. So I go to my my hard drive. Let me go import a media from a wedding I shot just of recent. All right. So all I just need to do is to click on my folder and then open it up. And then I can now select all of the video files I want to bring in and then say open. So we wait for the media to come into our program. So for my rough shots, I already have all of my media. They are all here. You can see the thumbnail. You can sometimes just have to wait for the thumbnail to load and then you wait for it to load. Okay, so we have it all already loaded up now. So these are all my rough shots that I'm going to be joining together. Now, I had mentioned that the first thing you want to do is to import in your media that you've organized. So let me import in some interviews. The same way, right click and then you say import media. All right. I want to go to another folder on my drive to import in another media. So let me bring in one from here. All right. Okay. So let me bring from here. Just click on all of it, import it in. All right. I want to also import in the audio. The same thing, right click, import bin. Let me get the, oh sorry, I need to go back to that file. All right, pre-wedding, and then I want to come to interviews, and then I want to bring in the audio file. Usually we edit, when I'm editing, I use a two-system way of shooting. All right, so I'm shooting on my camera separately, and then I'm bringing in my audio separately. So I don't bring I don't record on my camera. The audio is never recorded on my camera directly. So it's always a two-system thing for me to shoot. All right, so we've brought in our media. Now, how do we start editing them? There's something we call a timeline. For all of the edits you're going to be doing that on a timeline. All right, all the edits you want to do is going to be on a timeline, and this is what you call a timeline. To create a new timeline, we come to File, and then we say New Timeline. If you're using Premiere Pro, it is the same thing. You also create a new timeline on Premiere Pro. So we create a new timeline, and then we have to title our timeline. Let me call this highlight video. Okay, highlight video. So I'm going to basically start with one video track and one audio track, and then it is all going to be on a stereo track. So we just create that. As soon as you create that, you have, sorry, let me put this back into full screen. As soon as you create that, you have this your timeline. This is the video track, and then this is the audio track. You can see the V1 and A1. So if I want to bring in a video, all I just have to do is to drag one of my videos from the timeline, all right, and just drag it down onto my timeline. Okay, so sorry, let me do that again. I drag it onto my timeline. So we have a video track and an audio track. They go hand in hand. If I try to create another video track and then I drag it up, DaVinci Resolve will automatically create another video track for me. All right, create another video track for me. So currently I have 4 video tracks because of what I just did, but we can always undo that. Just your Control Z, and then let's get back to one track for now. So this is my video track. I can always scroll around to watch what is it that has been recorded. Now, recall earlier that I had mentioned something about DaVinci Resolve Speed Editor. So this makes my scrolling on the timeline really easy. All right, so if I want to really jog through, I can just use this to simply jog through. If I want to play and stop, I can easily use this to play, and I can also use it to stop. So this DaVinci Resolve Speed Editor, I've been using it for a while, and it has really made my editing faster. Okay, you really don't need this, don't forget. But if you also want to edit much faster, I would always advise that you get a speed editor. All right, so let's get back to editing this. Okay, let me put my screen back up. Okay, so that's for bringing in your files, so you can do as many as you want. So usually your timeline, like it is called, it is a timeline. You have time, so you can easily watch your time. You can see my time, changing. That's why it is called a timeline. I can always scroll through, and then my time can always change. So let me bring, because I want to edit a wedding theme basically. So you're just going to follow through with what I'm doing, and then if you have any question at the end of the day, you can always put it in the chat box, and then I can answer the question. So I also bring in some audio files. All of the audio I'm going to be using, there is no copyright item in this live stream. So you can always get your audio tracks from websites where you don't have to pay for the copyright. There's some websites that they allow you to use their music for free, and then they collect royalties on the music. But I actually have websites that I use that I can easily get music, and then I pay for them. Also, I can compose music on my own. If you see my setup, you would have seen this right in front of me. I have an elaborate knowledge of video and audio, so sometimes I compose background tones for myself, and then I can use it in my edit. All right, so but if you can't do that, that's totally fine. Just get any website where you can get free audio, and you can always edit your stuff. So let me bring in an audio. Let me bring in an audio file. It is the same way. I can always create a new bin. just come to this place, right click and create a new bin, and then we can call this music. Let's call it music. So sorry, music. Let me bring it up on its own. So we have our rough shots bin, we have our interview bin, and then we have our music bin. I can import in my music file the same way. Right click and import in media, or you could just simply come to your file and then just drag in whatever music you want to use. All right, and then it would come in. So we have our audio here, that's the music we want to use. We have our interview shots, we have our rough shots. Now let's start with bringing in our audio. Because you would be working with podcasts most of the time, you know that you would need audio, you would need music. So most times when I start to edit, the first thing I listen to is the music. It is a music that would most times, dictate the mood of the story I'm trying to tell. All right, so I've listened to this. All I just have to do is to bring it down onto my audio timeline. See, if you try to bring it down to your video timeline, it won't drop on the video, so it has to drop on your audio timeline. All right, so if I play this out, okay, so that's my audio already playing. Now let's go to bringing in video files so that we can start editing. So usually you work as an editor is to look for the best of your shots, and that's why you are the editor. You are looking for the best of the shots and then bringing them together to form a coherent story. All right, I could decide that I just want to bring in some video files and then just do something and then export it, but that doesn't make me an editor. All right, so the job of an editor is to look for the best of the video files and tell stories with it. All right, so I'm going to be starting with bringing this video into my timeline. So when I drag it in, you would note that there is something going on. By the time I bring it in onto my video timeline, recall that we already have an audio on our timeline before. So because the video we are bringing in also has an audio attached to it, the audio for that video is going to overwrite the initial audio we had brought on the timeline. So if I drop it and I start playing, let me say I am playing from the initial audio, you will notice that when it got to this, we now have another audio because they are clashing. So the proper way I would advise you to do this, you can just Ctrl Z to do that, is I would just drag down my audio file to another track. All right, so that we can have another audio track. That makes our audio 2 tracks. So we have audio 1 and then we have audio 2. So I can easily now bring in my video onto track 1 so that it doesn't overwrite the audio. Okay, all right, so what I'm going to do now is that I want to edit this, but I don't need the audio coming from this camera. I don't need the audio at all. It is this audio that I want to use. All I just have to do is to unlink the audio and then delete. To do that, click on the video file. All right, click and say, so there is this option to link clips. Currently it is marked and that is showing that they are linked. So once I click it, I have unlinked the video. So if I right click again, you will see that it is no longer marked. So what that means is that I can now simply delete the audio file only without deleting the video. If I had not done that, if I had brought in the video and the audio together, so if I decided I want to just delete the audio, when I click it, I'm going to be deleting everything together. So we usually have to unlink the video from the audio first so that we can then start to work on our video. All right. So like I had mentioned earlier, this is a timeline. Our timeline is starting from 00. So this is read in milliseconds, seconds, minutes, and hours. All right. So let's just bring it in to the start of the timeline, and then I can start to do my edit. So let me just play through and then see what I can come up with. Okay, so this is not making sense at all. To make it make sense, I'm going to be bringing in a lot more, video files into the timeline so that this can make more sense. But for now, usually when you are editing your video files, let me go bring in another video file. Let me bring in something like sorry, let me see. Okay, let me bring this. Right. So this is also, like I mentioned, you have to unlink the video from the audio if you know that you're not going to need in the audio. Because if I play this out, the audio is just noise. So all I need to do is just click on it and then delete it out. So I can play it out, and then wherever that ends, that's where it ends. So we can bring in more video files. Let's start in by bringing in the decorations first. Okay, so I can just unlink this, and then you can always overwrite. If you have a video file already and you want to overwrite it, all you just have to do is to drag it on top of it, and then it will override it. And there is also a feature on DaVinci Resolve that makes it more advanced than Premiere. You could also decide that you want to drag around when two files. So this is the first video, this is the second video. All right, when we bring them and then they touch each other, we have this gap between them. We can decide that we want to drag around, drag to this point, or I want to drag to this point. Okay, so that's just that, by the way. So I'm going to be starting with the decor video. All right, so all I just have to do is to just drag it into the first to the beginning of the timeline, and then I can decide which part of it is going to be useful for me. All right, so there's something I want you to note. I am having problems playing back these video files, and there is a reason why. This video was recorded on a Canon EOS R7. This is one of Canon's latest camera. I think it was released about 3 or 4 months or 5 months ago. I'm not so sure. So this video file records in H.265. Usually video files are recorded from so I have an EOS R. Let me show you this camera. So this is an EOS R. All right, or it's my R. Okay, so this is my R7. We have the bigger brother, the EOS R, that was released, I think 2018 or 2019. Those ones record with H.264 file formats. All right, but this newest all these new brands of camera, they are all recording in H.265, and what that means is that the files are usually very much compressed. They are very, very compressed. That makes the video file on your hard drive very small, but then that makes it very hard for your system to play them. Okay, so usually you need a very powerful system to play files that are highly compressed. We have some other recording formats like ProRes, which is usually very easy for your systems to play. You have the H.264 for some systems can find it very easy to play, and some can also find it very hard to play. You have the Blackmagic Raw. If I'm playing a Blackmagic Raw file on DaVinci Resolve, it is always smooth as butter because we don't have so much compression going on in the background. All right, so pardon that this is going to be sometimes skipping, but to avoid the skipping, what I'm going to be doing is to slow down my file. Now you might want to decide that, okay, so I'm scrolling through this file, and then I'm saying that, okay, I want to start the video from this part of the clip. So what I need to do is to pick up my razor clip. In DaVinci Resolve, it is called Blade Edit Mode. If you are using Premiere Pro, it is called Razor. And when you click on this, you would see that there is an alphabet written in front, and that's C. That's the shortcut. So I can either click on this, and then my cursor changes to a blade. So when I click this, you will discover that it has been splitted into two. All right, so but because it is not going to be wise for you to be going and coming back and going and coming back, it is advisable that you just use your keyboard shortcuts. All right, sorry, let me close some of my background apps that I think is giving my system a whole lot of load. Okay, so perfect. So you can use this to just cut your clips, but then, like I said, it is better you just use your letter C, alphabet C on your mouse or your keyboard rather, and then I can simply cut. If I need to cut, all of my files from anywhere, I need to cut them. Okay. If you've done any mistake and you want to undo, just your regular Ctrl Z, and then you can undo that. Okay. So I want to start my clip from here. I click on C on my keyboard, and then I cut this. To drop that razor, you can either come back here to drop the razor, or you press V on your keyboard. So you can just drop it, and then I can now delete this. So I've deleted the first part. I can then say I want to decide to start my video file from this part. All right. Usually when I'm shooting weddings, most of my shots are slowed down because that makes it, more emphatic. I can put in more emotions into all of that. If you want to slow down a shot in DaVinci Resolve, it is quite easy. All you have to do is to just right click. So we have about 3 methods of slowing down clips in DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to be touching 2 that I find very easy. The first is to right click this and then you say change clip speed. All right. When I say change clip speed, I can then decide to come and change it down to, so if I want to double the speed, I would use 50%. All right. I don't want to go into technical terms of frame rates for shooting. So if you are shooting at 60 frames per second, you can slow it down to 40%. If you are shooting at something about 120 frames per second, you can slow it down to 20 frames per second. All right. But I'm shooting at 60 frames. If you are in the UK, for example, we use the PAL video system in the UK. So you will shoot at 50 frames per second for slow motion. So usually we would slow it down to 50%. All right. And then I press change. So when I did that, you wouldn't really observe anything happening to the clip until we've played it back. And then that is when you can notice if there was any change at all. All right. Change clip speed. I had done it to, let me return it back to 100. That's the first method to usually change clip speed. Another method would be to press Ctrl R on your keyboard. When I press Ctrl R, it brings this up to say that, do I want to change my speed? So I can decide to also change my speed by clicking on any of this and say that I want to change my speed. Another method is to bring my cursor to the end of the clip, then drag it out. So by the time I start dragging it out, you would notice that the percentage starts to change. All right. So that can also change the clip speed. I can decide I want to make it faster by bringing it in. That also brings it in. Okay. So that is for, when you want to slow down or you want to fasten your clip. So let me bring in another file that will be much easier for my system to play. All right, so let's do this. So if I'm going to be editing this, I can see that from the start of the clip, it was shaking. So I really wouldn't use all of that part. I wouldn't use all of that part. I wouldn't use all of this part. If I'm going to be starting, this is most likely where I'm going to be starting. So I can just cut this off, delete this off, and then I can start from this. Okay, so that's that. And then I can also decide I want to change speed to say 40% when I start playing. Okay, so let me bring in more clips so that it doesn't look like we've been playing just one clip all through. So okay, for these two, you can also decide to either use your cut toolbar, or you can just bring in your cursor to the end of that video, or the beginning of the video rather, and then drag it out to where you want to start. So I can now move it closer to the first clip, sorry. All right, so that's basically how that works. For DaVinci Resolve allows you to work on multiple projects at the same time. So I had already done an edit of this file before, all of this before. So I'm going to come to my home tab and then open that video that I've already edited before, so that I can save a lot of time. It's the same way. I had brought in some of my files from the master bin, and sorry, I think I need to wait for them to load up. Okay, so I brought in some of my files, and then they are all already edited. Let me give you an overview of what I'm trying to do.
For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they twain, or the two of them, shall be one flesh.
Take the world off my okay, so the song I'm playing is a copyrighted song, so I wouldn't want this stream to go off air. So let me just get this out and then bring in an audio file that is not copyrighted. All right, so let me bring this in so that we can use this. All right, I can just drag this out like this, and then I can play this.
For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they twain, or the two of them, shall be one flesh.
October, it seems so far out of reach. I'm not broken.
Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to do. All right, so let me get back to the previous files we were working on. Okay, so let me come to you trying to do a podcast video. Let's bring this in. Let me delete this audio for now. So this timeline, you might decide that you want to either expand the timeline or reduce the timeline. And the way to do that, when you check your keyboard, you have this plus and minus button right above your alphabet P, just beside your figure number 0, sorry. So I could just press my minus, and then I could just press my plus, and then that would enlarge or reduce my timeline. Okay, so let me bring in the audio for this file and then show you how to sync video files with audio files on the DaVinci Resolve or in DaVinci Resolve for anyone. So let me just bring in the interview. I want to bring in the audio file. So like I had mentioned earlier, you can just click on whatever audio file you want to, and then you can either drag it into your bin, or you can decide to drag it in directly onto your timeline. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to be dragging it directly onto my timeline. All right, so when I was recording this, we had recorded our audio on a separate audio recorder, and then you have the video on the video file. All right, you have the audio from the camera file. If I play this out, you will barely hear it. So it's usually a very scratch audio, so we don't use that most times when we are editing. You want to bring in a clean audio. If you're working on your podcast, you could also be recording your audio on something like a Rode Podcaster. All right, okay, so you could do that using several softwares. So if it is a whole lot of video files and audio files, we have third-party softwares. We have one, I've been using one for a while. It's called Plural Eyes. That's the software you can use. Because we don't want to, go to another software, we'll be doing all of that on DaVinci Resolve. So to do that, I bring in my audio file, I bring it up here, and then this is the video for this. All I have to just do is to highlight all of my files and then right-click. All right. When I right-click it, I can then say Auto Align Clips. And when I say Auto Align Clips, what I'm trying to tell the camera to do is to find the audio file and sync it up with the video file. And the best way to do this is to use our waveform. So you can also use timecode, but this is usually more advanced. All right, so we won't be talking about timecode. Timecode would require some timecode devices. It is usually way more advanced, although it can be sometimes more simpler than using waveform. But for this, we're going to be syncing our video and our audio file using a waveform. So what I have to do is to just highlight all of them and then right click and then say Auto Align Clips and then say based on waveform. So it will analyze for the waveform of my video and then sync it up with my audio. So it has done that already. Okay, so if I play this out, let me just solo the audio file, the separate audio file, and then we can listen to it.
This will make you laugh. It actually started from Uncle K.
Okay, so this audio file, if you are listening on a stereo headset or if you are using a stereo speaker, you would observe that that audio was coming just from your right speaker. And the reason is because usually when you record with your microphone records most times in mono. So we have mono audio, we have stereo audio. You know all of this already. So sometimes when you record from microphones, they usually record on mono track. But because we are editing on DaVinci Resolve, my audio track was set to stereo. So when you click on this, you will see that it is a stereo file. So what I need to do is to change it to a mono file, a mono timeline rather, because if I do not do that, you would only be listening and hearing the audio from just one side of your speaker. Like you can hear it now. So for us to be able to hear it from both sides of the speakers, what you need to do is right click on this and then say convert track type. So we can convert it to stereo, we can convert it to mono. If you have a 5.1 surround system, you can do that. But for the purpose of this, we're going to be converting it into a mono track. So all I just have to do is to convert it to a mono track. So you will observe that this number changed. If you look at this, you can see 2.0 and this you can see 1.0. This 1.0 signifies or indicates that this is a mono track, while this indicates that this is a stereo track. A stereo track you can hear from both sides. But now that this is a mono track, we can now hear it on both sides. But it is not really playing on both sides. It's just a single file trying to play itself from both sides, of your speaker. So if I play this now.
This will make you laugh. It actually started from.
So you can basically see that we are hearing them from both sides of the speaker. So what I had done here was to solo this, because if you check the timeline, you will see that the video still has the scratch audio. And what I had done was to press on S to solo it. When I say solo, that means I just want to listen to this one. I don't want to listen to all of it. So when I click in and unsolo it, it would be able to pick up the audio from the camera. But we don't need the scratch audio. All we have to do right now is to just right click, like I had mentioned earlier, unlink the audio from the camera and delete it. So to make things very easy for me, I can just simply come to the beginning of my timeline, zoom out, bring my timeline. So this is your timeline control. I can always just bring it to the beginning of the clip and then cut the audio from here. Remember, I had mentioned that you can either use this or you use your letter C on your keyboard, and then I cut it out. I can drop it with my V and then I delete this. So what I just have to do is to drag the two of them and bring them to the beginning of the timeline. So we have a perfectly synced video and audio with this. Okay. Now, if it is multiple camera, somebody was asking I think somebody had asked that if you have audio files of speech, how do you manage to sync if you use separate audio device? I think I had already answered that question now. That is how you sync video and audio in DaVinci Resolve. You right click, you select everything, right click, and then you say that auto align clips based on waveform. However, if you are using a multiple camera system, so for example, if you look at what I'm doing currently, so I'm working on a multi-camera system. I have two cameras here with me. This is my first camera and this is my second camera. All right. But what I'm doing presently, I'm doing a live switch, and that's a live switch there. So I'm doing a live switch. So if you're an editor, what I'm doing currently is what you want to do. You want to switch between two angles of camera. All right. So let me show you how you can easily do that on DaVinci Resolve if you have multiple angles of video files. So let me imagine, or let me assume that this is the first angle. And how can I do that? So let me just create, because I don't have a second angle, I will just create a pseudo second angle. All right. Sorry, excuse me. I just want to quickly, so let's assume this is the first angle. Let's assume this is the second angle. I'm going to zoom this in so that we can have two angles. I'm going to teach you how to do all of this eventually, but just hold on. Just to assume that we have two angles. All right. Okay, so let's assume that this is the first angle, this is a wide shot, and then this is your second angle, this is a close-up shot. It is still the same principle. Just right click on all of it. I like all of it, all right, and then right click, and then you say auto align clips, and then you say based on waveform. Now there are other advanced ways of doing that on the cut page, but we won't be going to all of that. When you get more advanced in editing, you can learn how to also create multi timeline clips. All right, so let's just leave it at this for now. So let's assume that we now have two video tracks with just one audio track. So I can bring this audio up so that we won't have that space. So you can always check for what is under. So whatever it is that is on top is what you will see on the screen, and whatever it is under, you won't see that. So to see that, all you just have to do is to disable the video track for that. So now that I've disabled that, I can see what is under. All right. Another way to do this would be to create. I don't want to get too advanced because sometimes it can get really confusing. We call something a multicam timeline. When I create a multicam timeline, I can easily see both track on my timeline view when I'm editing, but I won't go to that for now. So let's just assume that we've enabled both tracks and then they are saying the same thing. So when I play it,
up in the same church. Yeah, our parents
okay, so I've moved my audio back to a stereo track, so I need to convert it back to a mono track because it is a microphone. It is always a mono. So let's just play this.
My name is Olúwa Adetola Shijuade. I met Kayode in church. We actually grew up in the same church.
Okay, so we want to edit between the two timelines, between the two angles rather. How do we do that? Recall that I had taught you to, if you want to cut, just press your C on your keyboard, or you pick your cut, tool from here, and then you can cut. Now, when you've cut, you need to drop that your cut tool, or you can also do that by pressing V. You would see that it had already set selection mode V. So when I press my V, so all I just have to do now is to click on this and then drag. Now, in DaVinci Resolve, when you are dragging, you need to be careful of what the cursor looks like. So when you bring your cursor in, if it looks like this, then you can easily drag. All right. So when I drag it, I can see what is under and I can see what is up. I can drag it back. But you see, if you bring it like this and you drag it like this, it is actually not going to, it is going to be extending. It is going to be extending this and extending it out. All right. And that's not what we want to do. So what we want to do is basically to take this. All right. We want to take this out and we want to take this out. Okay. So we have two angles now. So we can start from the close up.
Okay,
let me start from something coherent.
Okay. Ifeoluwa Adetola Shijuade. I met Kayode in church.
So let me imagine that I want to now jump to the second angle. All I just have to do is cut and then drag this out. All right. So that's me jumping. So when I play it back,
I met Kayode in church. We actually grew up in the same church.
So we have two angles already. Okay. Let me imagine that I want to bring in a background music for this so that it doesn't just play out dry. Let me bring in an audio file. So the same way, just drag it down to your timeline immediately. Now, this is an audio file, and usually most of these audio files, this is a music, and most times they are mixed down to stereo files. And remember that we've changed our track to mono, so we want to return this back to a stereo track so that we can have proper music playing in the background. Okay, so let's play this out and let's see what it sounds like.
Okay, hello, my name is Ifeoluwa Adetola Shijuade. I met Kayode in church. We actually grew up in the same church.
So if you are very observant, you will notice that the background music is clashing with the voice of the person we are interviewing. So that means that we either have to increase the volume of the audio of the person speaking, or we reduce the volume of the audio file. So how do we reduce volumes when it comes to DaVinci Resolve? We have two. I think we even have more than two ways, but I'll be touching two basic ways to do that. The first way to reduce the audio file or the volume for your audio file or increase it on DaVinci Resolve, you click on the file, and then when you come here, there is an inspector bar that we have here. When I click on this, you won't see it again. So when I click on inspector, you can easily bring out all of my parameters. You can also do your EQ. You can do so many things on this part. If I drag this down, you can do your EQ. That's for if you're an advanced audio editor, you would understand how to do all of the EQ and all of that. But we just want to deal with reducing and increasing the volume of the audio. So all I have to do is, if I want to reduce the volume, I just bring this down. All right, so we have -30. So if I play it out,
yeah, our parents attend the same church.
so you can basically see that your audio is now done. If I increase it back, it's too loud. Let me just bring it. Sorry, excuse me. I'm very sorry. So let me bring it to say 0.
Same church. So
you can see it is flashing. So what you want to do at this point in time is, let me imagine that we are starting out with a very loud music, a background music. And then when she starts talking, we want the music to go down so that it is only her voice we can properly hear, and then the music just plays in the background. What we have to do is to create so what we are going to do now, let me just bring this out a little. Let me imagine that this interview is starting from here. All right, let me just delete all of these files here. Let me delete this one and then bring the interview to start from here. Okay, so let me drag the audio out. All right, so we want to start with the music, being very loud. Let me increase the volume to say 3. And you want to also be very careful so that you don't go above minus 1 dB, because by the time you start getting to 1, 2, 3 dB, you can have some clipping. If you are good with audio edit, you will understand clipping. So let me just start with this and see what it sounds like.
Okay, hello.
All right, so we want the audio to immediately, the background audio, we want it to come down immediately she starts talking. And what we just have to do is to, so right before she starts talking, I can just go back like 3 frames and then click on this and then come to this part and click this. All right, so when I click this, I have created a point to remind my software that at this point in time, you want the volume of this audio to be at +4. And then I can now come back down and then tell you that once it gets to this point, I want you to reduce the volume to say -8 or -9. Okay, so when you zoom out on the timeline, you will see that we now have the 2 points. All right, so when the audio is coming in from here, this is still this point, it is at 4 dB, -4 dB. So if it is coming down to this place, we've told it that it should please come down to -9. So if we play this back.
Okay, hello. My name is Olúwa Adetola Shijuade.
So you can see that at that point, the audio track went down. If it is still not low enough, you can just always click on this, and then there is this arrow here that you can just click to go back to that point that you've created, and then you can reduce it a little more. Another way to reduce the volume for Resolve is to, you bring your cursor onto the audio clip, you would notice that it has changed to an up and arrow sign. So if I drag it up, I'm increasing it. If I drag it down, I'm reducing it. All right, so you can also do that for DaVinci Resolve. Okay, but then most times I usually like to input in my figures because I want to be very sure, so I could just say -15. All right.
Okay, hello. My name is Olúwa Adetola Shijuade.
I'm starting out now.
Okay, hello. My name is Olúwa Adetola Shijuade. I met Kayode in church. We actually grew up in the same church. Yeah, our parents attend the same church.
Okay, so let me imagine that is where I want to stop that interview. So all I just have to do is to cut out. Now, because I'm still editing, I wouldn't just click on this and then say delete, because I'm still going to use that file. So what I need to do, let me Ctrl-Z that. What I need to do is to create a new timeline and go and keep this file on the timeline, so that if I want to continue my editing, I can always just go back to that timeline and bring it in. Now, when you come to DaVinci Resolve, when you come here, you will see this. This is what we call the timeline view options. All right. So when I click on this, we have a stacked timeline. So if I want to stack my timeline, so I want to have multiple timelines. When I say stacked timelines, all right, you would see your timeline currently. So remember that when we started the video, we had an highlight video. So I want to create another timeline. All I just have to do is to press this plus. You can also come to file and then you say a new timeline, but that's going to be slower. So to make it faster, I just click on plus, and then that can help me to select if I had created some other timelines before. But because I have not done that, I'm going to be going to create a new timeline. So I say new timeline, and then I can title this what can I title this? Let me call this file. Okay, let me call this synced video file. All right, and say create. So when I create that, I have another timeline already. So what this does for you is you can be editing on this timeline, and then you want to move your files away from here and just bring it to this timeline without having to delete that file entirely. So what I have to do is to zoom out. So I have this, let me just delete this. I just have to zoom out and then, select all of the files I'm not using, and then you can go to edit and cut it. If you're on Mac, Command X. If you're on Windows, Control X. Just the same way you cut on all other video file, all other softwares, and then I can just come and paste the remaining of that file here. So by doing that, I did not delete the file completely, so I can continue whatever I'm doing. So let me imagine that I want interview to stop at this point in time.
Our parents attend the same church.
Right now, I want to bring in somebody else. That's the groom. I want to bring in the groom. The same way. Okay, so let me drag this down a little so that we can have more audio. So this is the scratch for the groom. Okay, no, I think this is it. Let me use this. All right. So we can also bring in the scratch audio, the recorded audio rather, sorry, for the groom. Where did I put it? Sorry. Right. Interview audio. I think this is his own file. Let me preview it.
I didn't forget
to. So the same way, like I mentioned, just drag it down into your timeline. Very easy. Let me close this out. So what I had done earlier, I want to do the same thing for him. I want to also sync the video and the audio. All I just have to do is to click on the 3 files that I'm trying to sync. Right click, and then you can just say auto align clips based on waveform, and then wait for it to analyze the content, and then bam, we already have it synced up. Okay, so I can just drag this all out from. Let me look for the part that will be very useful for me.
I met her and
Okay.
It's been more than 8 years now.
All right, so let's imagine that as soon as she is done speaking, I want him to start speaking. This is where I want to start his own video from. So all I just have to do is to cut out this. I don't need this, so I'm going to delete this. Now, remember that we don't need the audio file from the camera again, so I can just unlink it, delete it, and then bring this back for him. So this is for his own file. So I can just simply drag this after, and then we have it like this.
We actually grew up in the same church. Yeah, our parents attend the same church.
It's been more than 8 years now. Yeah.
So there is a gap here that I need to remove. If you zoom out on the, or zoom in on the timeline, you would observe that you can see the waveform. There is a silence here, and I really don't need the silence. So I just zoom out, and then I can just go and remove this. Okay, and then delete this, and then bring this close to him. So I think there's also silence here too. Okay.
Same church.
Okay, so we can cut this off from this place too. Delete this, select this, and bring it close. So if we start the file from the start.
Okay, hello.
Okay, so for this too, we don't need the beginning because there was silence there. So we could just get this off. Meanwhile, your audio can actually start playing before your video. Also, you could decide that you want to bring in, say, your logo. So for example, the video is starting and you want to start it with your logo, right? I could just go forward, and then let me go and bring in my logo. I think I have my logo stored on the editing tools. I should have it somewhere here. Okay, so I have it here. This is going to tamper with my video. Let me go to the second timeline and input it into this place. All right. Okay, so this is my logo. I don't need the audio file for it. Let me just delete it, cut it, and then copy it. So if I copy it out and then I come to my highlights, I can just come and paste it here. Now you observe that when I pasted it, it had cut out some of the video files from so I can just easily drag it back. And then, so let's imagine the video starts with my logo.
Okay, hello. My name is Olúwa Adetola Shijwade. I met Kayode in church. We actually grew up in the same church. Yeah, our parents attend the same church.
It's been more than 8 years now. Yeah, we actually grew up together. We used to attend the same church from childhood. Our parents also attend the same church.
Okay, so let's just stop him at this point in time so that we don't have him just talking and talking and talking. So I can cut that and then just cut this out and come and bring it to my, I don't need this again. Let me come and bring, okay, so let me just reduce this and bring him to this timeline. So we have the groom, we have the bride. All right. So we can now bring in some other video files and then start to play around with those video files. So let me go bring in some of the rough cuts that I have done. Let me just bring in some of the rough cut that I've done. Okay. What I want to do now. So let's take, for example, that I want to bring this in. Don't forget that when you bring them in, they come in with the audio. You just have to remove the audio because we don't need the audio. So let's assume that once they are done, I want to jump straight to one of their rough videos where they're working. So what I need to do, so you would observe that the beginning is shaking. So I wouldn't need the beginning. So let me just cut out the parts that I don't need and then bring this in. Now, to jump from this to this, it would not be so good for us to just jump like that. So we use what we call video transitions so that your audience is not going to be shocked. So they are watching this already and then you just jump like that. You can decide that that is what you want to do, but at this point that is not what I want to do. I want to fade out this video and fade this in. To do that, you just bring your cursor. You will see that there is this white stuff here. Just drag it down. And then what that does is it fades out the video. All right. So to also fade this one in, click on this and then bring this up. So we can easily have something like this. All right. So fades out, fades in. Okay.
Also attend the same church.
All right. So you can either do that. Let me proceed, or you can decide that you want to go to effects. So if you come to your effects library, here's your effect library, and then we have different types of effects. You can always preview what it will look like when you click on one of them. So what I had done here was a dip to color. So I dipped it to black. So what I just have to do is to drag it down and put it in between the two clips. So if I play this out, sorry, let me play it again so that you can see it. I don't know. So you can see that. So I can decide that instead of it dipping down to black, I want it to be white. So I can click on this and then change the color to white. So if it is going to go out, it will go out, into white color, not black.
Same church.
But obviously, I'm not going to be doing that. So I could also decide that I want to use something like a smooth cut between the two of them, so that it will just, something like fading in and fading out. All right. So, but basically, the fastest way so that you don't have to come to this place and start clicking all of that is to just drag this like this and then drag this like this. All right. And then
so attend the same church.
Okay, so now we want to bring back our audio, our background sound. We want to bring back the volume. So
the same church.
So this is where the clip stops for him talking. So you want to create another point by clicking on this. So every time you want to create one of these, you just come to click on this. All right, it changes to red. That's that we've created one of that, and then we can now bring this up. And then, so let's say that once it leaves, I want the volume to come back up. So all I just have to do now is to bring back my volume up. You can either type it in or you can just drag this stuff in. Or let me just type it in and say 3. So I can play it out.
Childhood, our parents also attend the same church.
So our audio is back up. Let me get a good video file. This file is not something I'm supposed to use. Oh, okay. Okay, this is what I wanted to do so that I can see exactly what I'm trying to do. So let me assume that I want to bring something like this in. Okay, let me bring this in. I'll link this and delete this. Okay, so we want to start from here. So let me just cut this out and then drag it to this part. So the same way, you can always just drag this up and then you can also drag this like this. All right, same way, and then we can play it out.
Same church.
So that effect is way too fast. All I just have to do is to slow down my clip like I taught you earlier. I click it, change clip speed, Let me change it to 40%. Press enter so that that speed would, so this makes it smoother. So I might decide I want to edit to the beat or to the tone. So once I hear that, I cut it out. So let's just stop it here. All right, and then I delete that.
My parents also attend the same church.
As easy as it gets. All right, so this is just the basics. I'm seeing that I've used 1 hour already so that I don't take too much time. That's just the basics of you bringing in your files and all of that. Let me quickly touch bringing in titles. So let's assume that while they're talking, you want to bring in a title, you want to write something. DaVinci Resolve still has a very long way to go when it comes to titling. Unlike Premiere Pro, titling on Premiere Pro is quite very easy. On DaVinci Resolve, it's a little more complex. So to bring in titles for DaVinci Resolve, what you have to do is to come to your effects, and then you go look for your titles. All right, sorry, let me okay. So usually when I use two screen workspace, this makes it much more easier for me. Just a second, please. Let me use dual screen now. All right, okay, just a second, please. For reasons unknown, I can't find my title bar. So usually on DaVinci Resolve, I had mentioned that titling can be very funny. Okay, just 1 second. I'm trying to get it from my second screen. Let me go to one of my previous videos. Okay, I'd touched on this before. Did I do anything on titles here? Not at all. Not at all. 1 second. Let me check for this. Okay. So this is a title bar. Usually for text. All right, sorry, that's a text bar. So basically for DaVinci Resolve, if I'm going to be making text or titles, it is not as very easy as it is on the Premiere Pro. You have to bring in, just like you're bringing in a video file, that's the way you bring in text from your effect folder. You bring in the text and then you can write whatever it is you want to write. So let me imagine I want to say okay, so we have the end. We can say this video was brought to you by Rise and Shine. Okay, so now this is getting too big. And you can change your font, from here. Whatever font you want to change it to, you can change it. And then you can always change the size. It's just the same changing. You can change the tracking, how large you want it to get and all of that. So let me just get this title from here and bring it to my, let me bring it to my tutorial class and just paste it here. Okay, so let me imagine we are done with this video and then we just want to title it out. We just want to leave and then so for this, there are so many effects that you can use for your titling. You can decide to zoom it out and zoom it in. To do that, come to your settings. It is the same way, and we create this for our zooming in and out. So this is where we are currently at this point in time. I can click on this so that I can enlarge it up. We're not going to do that for now. So click on this, and then if I move forward, I can then decide to zoom it out a little. But you want to make sure that it doesn't cut off the screen. All right. So when I play it out now, okay. So let me zoom it out so that we can see properly. All right. Okay. So the point that I created one point here, and then I jumped to the next point, and then I increased it. So I can also decide I want to make it as big as I want. You can either do that there, or you could also do it here by yourself. All right. So let me just close this out, and then basically my video starts with my logo.
Okay, hello. My name is Olúwa Adetola Shijuade. I met Kayode in church. We actually grew up in the same church. Yeah, our parents attend the same church.
It's been more than 8 years now. Yeah, we actually grew up together. We used to attend the same church from childhood. Our parents also attend the same church.
Let's assume we are done with the video now, and then we want to stop as audio. I can always delete this. So it is the same way. You can also fade out your audio the same way we faded out our video. We can just fade out our audio by clicking on this and then fading it out. All right, it's quite very easy. You don't need to create any point for this. Just fade it out. So if I play it now, so that fades out the audio. All right, so I think this is just the basics of what you'll be doing when you are editing, your podcast, your whatever video you want to. That's just the basics of your editing. If you want to get some more advanced editing features, we have a whole lot of videos on YouTube that can teach you all of that. But just for now, I think I've been able to, because I had promised I was going to use just 1 hour, and I've used 1 hour 15 minutes, so I have to stop at this point in time. It's just a basic, edit tutorial. If there's any question, you can please drop it. I think I already answered 2 questions already. All right, so we are done with our video. How do we now deliver our video? So we want to send our video to YouTube. We want to deliver our videos to our phone. How do we do that? On DaVinci Resolve, we have the deliver page. This is where you deliver your videos. We call it render. So we are done with all of those effects and all of that. So we want to render out the video. How do we do that? On DaVinci Resolve, it is called the deliver page. So you click on it, and then this comes up. So the file name, so let me call it total tutorial video. So where am I supposed to save it? So I can just decide wherever. So I usually save my videos on videos external and then save it there. So you have so many options. Okay, so I want to render it out as a single clip. I'm not going to be rendering out individual clips, so it is going to be single clip and then video. Now for the format, ideally you want to use MP4. Ideally, if you're uploading to YouTube or to your phone or wherever it is you're sending it to, you want to select MP4. You can also use QuickTime, but I would advise that you use MP4. All right, and then you want to use an H.264 codec. H.265 is usually very compressed. There are some systems that can't play it very well, so we use H.264. You want to use hardware acceleration so that the rendering can be very fast, and then usually you want to pick an automatic quality. If you're an advanced editor, you can decide to restrict it to some bitrate, but we won't do that. So we just use automatic quality. So that's that. For audio, you can come to your audio track. I really don't think you need to change anything for this. It's usually AAC. Sometimes you can use a variable bitrate, but for me, I usually use constant bitrate and then 320 kilobytes per second for my data rate. When I'm done, I then say add to render queue. So once I click it to add to render queue, it brings it to this render queue, and then it says it is ready to render. So all I just have to do is to say render all, and then it can start to render. You can see the progress of your rendering from here. Okay, so I did not do color correction on this or color grading because this is not a color grading class. All right, this is just an editing class. So when you're done with that, when it is completed, when the rendering is done, it will tell you it is completed in just 2 seconds. So I can always go back to my system and go and find that video. I think I saved it to render the videos. All right, what did I save it as again? What was the title I gave it? Okay, tutorial video. So I saved it to external videos, and then I called it video external, tutorial video. So this is the video file, so I can always play it out and then we can see.
Okay, hello. My name is Olúwa I met Kayode in church. We actually grew up in the same church. Yeah, our parents attend the same church.
It's been more than 8 years now. Yeah, we actually grew up together. We used to attend the same church from childhood. Our parents also attend the same church.
So, there you have your video file for, you can send it to YouTube or wherever it is that you want to send it to. So, thank you very much. I need to go now. I had promised I was going to use 45 to 1 hour, but really 45 minutes to 1 hour. I did not know that it was going to take this long. So, if you have any other questions, you can always shoot at me. You can also check up some of my works, some of the stuff that I've done on Instagram at Easy Yoke Films. Let me write that out briefly so that if you need to contact me for any other question, you can always please come to so you can find my work at Easy Yoke Films on Instagram. That's where you find most of my videos that I've worked on. So thank you very much. I think Sarah, are you still there with me? So this is where we're going to be stopping. I think I've tried to just take you through the basics of video editing. So thank you very much for having me once again. That will be all